The United States Ambassador to Israel, Thomas Nides, joined Mohammed Al-Kassim, the Media Line Bureau Chief, to discuss the U.S. administration ties to Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and also to talk about the latest on the Iran nuclear deal and more. How do you view Israel's Prime Minister Yair Lapid's public support during his UNGA speech on the issue of the two-state solution? Is it realistic?
As you know, this is not the first time the Prime Minister has articulated his view of a two-state solution. In fact, when President Biden was here a month ago, he had a press conference, reiterated his support for a two-state solution. So again, standing up at the UN and talking about it is exceptionally important. Obviously, the United States, President, myself, all those who are serve in this administration fully support what he said, and we hope over the long term can get to where we need to be, which is a two-state solution, 67 borders, and we'll have the ability to have a two-state solution, not only a vision of a two-state solution, but in reality a two-state solution for the Palestinian people and the Israeli people, without, by the way, very important, compromised security of the state of Israel, which is what the Prime Minister articulated.
Israel has aggressively been making its case against Iran's nuclear deal. And Israeli officials have been going back and forth to Washington, to European capitals, in an attempt to persuade Western leaders either to sign a tough deal or not to sign a deal. Has its presentation helped the U.S. formulate a position on the Iran nuclear deal?
Well, let me make 3 points. Number one, the President has said from the beginning that we have Israel's back, that we will not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. He said that over and over and over again. Number two, the President has also articulated that we will under no circumstances tie Israel's hands to defend itself, be it Iran or Hezbollah or the proxies, and we've been very clear about that. Number three, yes, the President would like to get back into the JCPOA under the conditions that he has set up through the Europeans. And ultimately, it's really up to Iran. If they want to accept those conditions, we would seriously consider going back into the JCPOA. So the reality of this is the President has been very clear about the importance of getting to a diplomatic solution here under the right terms. One thing we are clear is that the Israelis and the United States are lockstep in understanding what's going on the ground. I am in no way suggesting Israel supports the going in or the government supports going back into JCPOA, but there is complete connectivity between the Israelis and the Americans of what's going on the ground and the communication of what's happening with the negotiations.
What's Israel's main objection to what's being negotiated? What do they come to the U.S. administration with, saying, you know what, we hear that you're about to sign a deal, but it shouldn't happen because of this? What are they doing?
You know, I think the Israelis, listen, you just live in this neighborhood. This is a very complicated neighborhood. I have enormous respect for the Israelis and the defense establishment to understand their anxieties. It's not just about the Iranian, the regime. It's about their proxies. And if you ask Israelis, they're obviously concerned about Iran getting to break out and ultimately having the technology to put the components onto a missile. That's obvious. But they're also quite concerned about the proxies, and that's Hezbollah in Syria, Hamas in Gaza. They have angst about that, which we share with them. So listen, their concerns are legitimate. I would be the first one to suggest they're not. There is no perfect deal here, folks. The important part of this is we believe under the right conditions to slow this program down is in the national security interest for Israel in the region, and that's what we're trying to strive for if the conditions are met.
We came so close to signing in the last couple of months. Every time we get so close on the cusp of signing a deal, it just collapses. Is that Tehran's fault, Washington's fault, Europeans, who?
No, it's the Iranians' fault. Listen, number one, as you know, the President was very clear. He was not going to agree that would suggest we take off the designation of the FTO, the foreign terrorist designation, off the IRGC. He said no. That was something we wouldn't agree with. Number two, if you believe what you read on Media Line or the New York Times, the reality of this is that The president has said he will not stop the cases to being heard by the IAA as it relates to the cases which are open. He did not agree to closing those cases and not linking them to an agreement. So there's issues like that that are fundamental to the United States' position, and we will not compromise on those fundamental views.
The current U.S. administration's position on settlements is very well known. But aside from public statements criticizing the building of new settlements and expanding settlements, what else can the U.S. do to pressure Israel on this issue?
Let's be clear. Every day, I articulate to my friends, our allies, Israel, about our views around settlement growth. I think it's well known. It's President Biden's well-known position. By the way, Democrats and Republican administrations have also had the same position that we've had, which we basically do not believe it's consistent for a two-state solution to do expansions of settlement in the West Bank. And we've been very clear about that. So I work with the Israelis every time these conversations come up, trying to get them to either slow down or stopped. And they know our positions, and that's we not only articulate it, but we work with all of the NGOs.
Continue to build and expand the settlements.
Again,
they understand your position. This isn't something new. I mean, successive U.S., like you said, U.S. administrations, Republicans or Democrats, have been clear, with the exception maybe of the last Republican administration, have been clear on the settlements issue. But Israel continues to expand building settlements and continues to build settlements. What else aside from public statements and public criticism that the U.S. especially, which has great relationship with Israel, can do maybe to change Israel's view on settlements?
Listen, as we say to both the Israelis and the Palestinians, we don't want to put conditions on the ground that make it impossible for a two-state solution, right? So we constantly tell both the Palestinians for their behaviors and the Israelis for their behaviors that to do things that make it impossible for a two-state solution is not what we think is in the best interest for the Palestinians and or for the Israelis. So we're very clear, we're very focused on it, and we continue to push both parties to make sure they keep the conditions on the ground to allow for the potential for a two-state solution.
The Palestinians have called on President Joe Biden to fulfill his campaign promise and reopen the U.S. consulate in Jerusalem. Also, they've asked the U.S. administration to reopen the Palestine Liberation Organization office in Washington, as well as lifting the PLO from the U.S. terrorist list. Why hasn't the U.S. moved forward on these issues?
Well, it's interesting you ask this question. We continually to push the Israelis to open the consulate, and again, we'll continue to do that. But it doesn't take away the fact that we have 75 men and women in Jerusalem working every single day on the issues helping the Palestinians both in the West Bank and Gaza. 75 people that every day wake up for the sole goal is to help those individuals. Yes, would we like the consulate, of quote, officially open? Sure. But just to think about this for a second, we now are spending almost $500 million of U.S. taxpayers' money helping the Palestinian people, not the PA, but the people, education, healthcare, working with them. We care deeply about the people. We care deeply in giving people the opportunities for the healthcare, the respect, the security that they need, and that's what we're spending our energies on. Yes, obviously we'd like to officially open the council, but it is not stopping the work that we're doing every day, not only work, but money, trying to help the Palestinians have a better life.
Are you still working on convincing Israel to reopen the consulate?
Oh, absolutely.
How advanced are plans?
You know, every time the president was here, he talked about it. Secretary Blinken spoke to the government. I've spoken to the government. We continue to speak to the government. But I'm without question understand the importance of it. But I want people to understand. Every day we wake up working on this issue, working on the security of the state of Israel, and working to try to make the Palestinian people on the street feel better about their situation on the ground. Because I believe, and we believe, it makes Israel a stronger democratic Jewish state and keeps a vision of a two-state solution alive.
Will we see it open in the next few months or during?
Again, I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know. But again, I want to be clear. It does not stop the efforts every single day that we are doing to help the Palestinian people, and I think that's very, very important.
President Biden, in his UNGA speech, once again stated his support for the two-state solution, but without giving a roadmap on how to achieve this end goal. What is his plan in order to achieve the two-state solution?
Okay, so I think it's number one. Words matters, but action matters. The president went to see President Abbas in the West Bank on his trip. He articulated very clearly that he supports not only a two-state solution, but the 67 lines with land swaps, which has been the position that the president has articulated many times. Number two, we also talk with our checkbook. The Americans are the biggest supporter for the Palestinian people. Okay, the people. That's about individuals. It's about health care. It's about education. It's about standard of life. The president went to East Jerusalem, to the East Jerusalem Hospital Network, and announced $100 million to help 80% of the patients that go to the East Jerusalem Hospital are from the West Bank and Gaza. These are real, tangible things. I've been working with the Israeli government to open the Allenby Bridge 24/7. We're talking about making sure that the Palestinians have 4G. These are real things. Yes, I know it's not, I'm getting a Nobel Peace Prize here in the Rose Garden for peace in the Middle East, but it's important, and I think the president's a very practical human being. We want a two-state solution. We want to make sure there's a vision of a two-state solution that is alive and moving forward. We want to convince the parties not to do things that make that impossible to achieve. So I think it's a very robust agenda. I think we have a very clear vision of where we are and where we're going, and that's what we're working towards.
How does Washington view the latest internal Palestinian fighting in the northern West Bank in the city of Naples?
As you probably know, which has been widely reported, that some of the actions that were done in those areas were conducted by the Palestinian security forces, which obviously we commend. To getting the Palestinian Authority to basically take out some terrorist cells. The security of the State of Israel is critically important. There are people in those neighborhoods who want to do harm for the State of Israel, and those have to be stopped. And obviously, it would be ideally, I think, for the Israelis. I can't speak for the Israelis, obviously, but it would be way better when those things happen that's being done by the Palestinian security forces and not done by the IDF. So ultimately, that's an important part of this, and we have to strengthen the abilities of the Palestinian Authority, of the Palestinian security forces' ability to take those actions. Our security forces, the joint operation that we have there, run by General Fenzel, works directly with the Palestinians and the IDF for training, the ability to do the things they need to do. So, obviously, our hope is that the Palestinian Authority, through their security forces, take the actions that need to be taken to secure those neighborhoods.
Don't you think that the Israeli army raids night after night that has intensified in the last few months and this year will lead to the destabilization of the Palestinian Authority?
Again, my hope is that those whatever activities are taking place or taken by the Palestinian security forces, obviously Israel needs to defend itself. If there are forces in those neighborhoods that are causing or potentially causing Israel harm, terrorist cells, they need to be taken care of. I stand fully support of that, and obviously our hope that many of those actions are taken by the Palestinian security forces.
Is there an heir apparent to President Mahmoud Abbas that the U.S. would like to see succeed him once his position becomes vacant?
Again, it's not my position to determine who
Someone that
ultimately.
the U.S. would like to work with.
Again, it's not my determination of who the Palestinian people to decide who their leader is going to be.
Is the U.S. fully satisfied with the Israeli army investigation for the killing of Palestinian American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh? And why did the U.S. drop its demand for Israel to review its rules of engagement in the West Bank?
Well, first of all, let me just step back and articulate which I've done dozens of times, my sympathy for Shireen's family. As you probably know, I went to the wake. I sat with her brother. I've spoken to his brother 5-6 times, and her niece and his daughter. It is. I mean, my My spouse is a journalist. You're a journalist. You understand it's an enormously dangerous occupation, especially those who are quote war correspondents. So my heart breaks for them. As you know, the Israelis came to the same conclusion that we came to, that it was likely that the IDF sadly shot her, not intentionally, but shot her. Number three, I think it's important to understand that we, like many militaries, but ours, who I think arguably is a pretty sophisticated military, probably the most sophisticated military in the world, we constantly look at our rules of engagement, always. Like, you know, even last month, I think the Secretary of Defense articulated another review of our rules of engagement. Which we do to all of our friends, we encourage them when something like this happens, she's an American citizen, that they always continue to look at the rules of engagement. We've encouraged Israel to do that. We'll continue to encourage them to do that. Obviously, we can't tell our allies what to do and not to do, but it's something that's very important to us.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your time.
I'm honored. Thank you.